make any adjustments. I know questions have come up specifically about Seth Boyden School. We have heard everyone. We've taken into consideration. The numbers that are projected for Seth Boyden School indicate that everybody will not be at max, but certainly under max. The only grade that I will say is the exception would be if kindergarten enrollments come in as high across the district as they have in the past, and if we don't have the capacity to add an additional kindergarten class, that's the only one that may end up at the max. But we are looking, we watch it very closely. Mr. Memley could attest to the fact that come June probably, we look at the numbers daily. We look at some of the enrollments coming in individually to see where they're coming in, what the impact's going to be, so we watch it very closely.
Thank you.
Oh, and just, I will say, although this is a very tight budget, and I don't know what we would do if we needed to add staff, but this year when we did see increases, we added an extra FTE as necessary when we needed to open another one. So we're not planning on going above what's allowed by policy.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Doherty.
Just to follow up on that, when you say go to the max, you mean the max is outlined in the class size policy, not the +2 with the superintendent's.
Our projections are at the max of what policy is, not the +2.
Not the +2.
But I will not say that we won't consider the +2.
Right, but we're not budgeting for +2.
But we're not budgeting for that.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Baker.
Ms. Schneider, just two questions. First, to clarify with respect to the elementary staffing projections and the concerns we've heard at Seth Boyden regarding that fourth grade section that was reduced. It's my understanding, and if you could confirm it, I'd appreciate it, that section that was reduced this year will be restored next year as that grade moves into fifth grade.
There will be an additional fifth grade compared to the fourth grade next year. I wouldn't say that it was reduced last year. It was how it had been projected. And then a couple of students had enrolled at the last minute there, pushed things over. Anyway, but we realized what that impact was, and there is an additional FTE scheduled for the fifth grade next year.
Thank you. My next question has to do with what looks to me in the more detailed budget document to be expenditures for paraprofessional services. I'm looking in the different special ed cost centers where it says purchase of professional educational services, instructional aids. Is that the paraprofessionals?
Yes, it is.
So I'm noticing that in the different special education cost centers, there appear to be significant reductions in paraprofessional services under some items, and then a very large increase under the resource room inclusion grouping. And I'm just wondering, one, if these net out without having taken a calculator and run the numbers myself, and two, if you could explain what's going on here in terms of whether it's just how we're budgeting it or some programmatic shift that's being reflected.
It's how we're budgeting it. It's where we've been reporting them. If you look at the last year's budget of FTE locations compared to this year's, you'll see a movement from some of the specific lines, like the learning disabled, the multiple, they were moved onto just a self-contained or an inclusion class as opposed to being accounted for there. With that movement, we were adjusting where we were projecting that the paraprofessionals were going to be next year. So it really was more of an alignment to how they're being used than a shift in any kind of programming. It's just an internal adjustment really for the accounting of it. The overall net is actually an increase. I know that if you look at the bottom line of the overall special ed spending, there's an increase which is really reflective of the increase in out-of-district tuition that we've had. An increase in the paraprofessionals was another big part of that, because we've seen a big increase in how they're being used. It's another area we're trying to curtail, because we have some that get hired to service a certain student, and then the student might move out, and then the para gets used for something else within the school as opposed to staying with the student who used to be there. So we're working on really making that alignment to bring those costs back down, but we are expecting to have Did I just confuse you completely? Because I know I just didn't say that in a straightforward way.
So overall, there's an
It's a-
increase in paraprofessional services, and where we see reductions,
It's just
certain
real-
it's moving
right.
it to other cost centers.
Correct.
And can I just ask one final question? I'm going, I saw the slide and also I think the revenue and expense projection summary where it appeared to me that our federal funding was pretty much steady, but when I'm looking at the more detailed preliminary school budget, it seems that some of the federal items are showing a reduction, and I don't know if I'm misreading it, but I had that question.
You're looking at a reduction compared to the adjusted budget, and maybe a slight reduction compared to, no, it shouldn't be a reduction to last, oh, and yes, a reduction from, trying to remember, no, it shouldn't be a reduction from last year's budget. It'll just show up as the adjusted budget. Remember, adjusted budget includes a couple of different things that happen during the year. One being with the federal grants, I get advised to budget it at 85% of what the current year's budget is, just because we don't get word on what's happening with the federal grants until June. And so to be conservative, the advice that we get from the county and from others is to look at 85%. In fact, that's one of the things that gets checked when I go to do my county review, not within the budget software, but they look to see what I'm budgeting for in terms of those federal grants and making sure that I'm not being too overly optimistic. In addition to that, what you're looking at with the adjusted budget, we had a lot of carryover from the prior year, money that had not been used at the very end, and we're allowed to carry over a small percentage into the next school year. And so those funds had been carried over, and it shows a bump in the adjusted budget. But that carryover will not be available again for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Schneider?
I have a few.
Okay, Ms. Wright.
Hello, everyone. Ms. Schneider, so good to see you this evening. I do have a few questions. I think everybody know the last time we met, I talked about having questions that I needed answered. And so hopefully tonight I can get some answers to some of the questions that I have. My first question is going to deal with Montrose, and that question is, what was the financial justification for not going with a special ed model versus a preschool model? And part two of that question is, how many students do we have in the district in preschool for years, and how many do we have with special needs? It's the justification.
In terms of the financial decision,
No, justification. What was the justification?
the justification for it, number one, I need to clarify the fact that the preschool is a special education program. We are opening it up for regular education students as well, but it is a special ed program. The justification was looking at the different special education programs that we thought would be sustainable, that would entice people to come back into district. There are, as part of the proposal, assuming that there's going to be some preschool special ed students who are currently out of district or would be out of district coming back into the district. Preschool tends to be students who have similar needs, and therefore, in order to staff that, we were able to do it with one group that was servicing similar needs. Looking at some of the higher levels of students, the older students, they're going for very specific needs. A number of the programs that we looked at to bring them back in, speaking to other agencies and other districts about doing a joint program there, frankly, we couldn't match some of the programs that are out there. And so we did not feel that the out-of-district students, we'd be able to bring them back in at that level because of the competition that's out there. We just couldn't match it. Also, because there are not that many preschool special ed in the area, whereas there are some local other special education need type programs around, we felt that we could get more out of district students, meaning students from other districts coming in, that they would be interested in coming to us. We did not feel that we were at a point where we'd be able to do that with a different type of program. The other thing is that we had, when students go out, there's a tendency that it's difficult to have them come back in district. And so we were looking at the fact that our youngest students who might be going out of district, if we can give them the program that they need and the support from an early age, that we can grow with them and that they'd be able to stay with us and use the other programs that we already have in district. So there were a number of different reasons why we had looked to do that and felt that it was a more feasible presentation and source of a successful program than some of the other options that we looked for special ed, but I unfortunately I just don't have it. I could have it for you for Monday. Efficiencies, and that gets used to build into the next year's budget. So it's done in a couple of different ways.
And what would be some of the comp districts to us that we have compared ourselves to?
Usually, well, the overall comparison is done when I do my efficiency review, for instance, is done at the statewide level. There's a comparison of all like districts, and all like districts being K through 12 over a certain dollar amount. So that comparison is done statewide. We also look at a comparison just within Essex County. That's done by the county. We have regular county meetings where we have those conversations. We tend to look at the other similar size districts in Essex County, West Orange, Livingston, and Milburn. We also look at some of the other ones nearby. Oftentimes members of the community come and bring up Westfield or a Summit. I'm in touch with those business administrators all the time. We have discussions and do comparisons of where people are finding efficiencies and how they're doing things.
Okay, thanks. Another question. Sorry, guys, y'all might have to red flag me tonight. I put that
Yeah, right. Miss Pie is, good. Right.
My next question is the cost of consultants and outsourcing. Our discussions in terms of other districts and what they do in terms of outsourcing and consultants. Is there anything that we can pick up on them? I mean, we outsource and a lot of other people don't. And if we could do some type of comparison as to when we began to outsource, have we really saved money? With it, I don't know if there's a kind of thing that you do as a BA, with your assistants and things like that. I'm having, whoa, sing it, baby. It's singing over there. I'm glad that
Things are getting
he's
heated
coming
here.
up. That's a good thing. But I was wondering if